Welcome to Wayne County Connection. I'm your host, Michael Sweigart, and again, it's my pleasure to be with you as we promote Wayne County as a great place to work, live, and play. As always, I want to encourage you to do your part to make Wayne County a great place to work, live, and play, and you can do that first. We thank you for watching the show, and then by connecting at our website, waynet.org/cc. That's where you can find out more information about today's program and past programs and ways that you can get connected. While you're on WayneNet, I encourage you to swap over to the calendar page to find out about the events that are going on here in Wayne County and how you can get involved. There's a lot going on this spring, and there will be more going on this summer. Always, if you have an event that you'd like to promote, go ahead and submit it to the calendar page to let people know what you're doing to promote Wayne County as a great place to work, live, and play. As regular viewers know, we are in a series right now where we're talking with the school superintendents around Wayne County, and it is my pleasure to introduce you today to Dr. Todd Terrill. He's the superintendent of the Richmond Community Schools. Todd, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks. As is our standard here on the program, we'd like to start by making the connection between you and our guests. And so I'm going to ask you, for those that don't know you, to tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I've been superintendent here in Richmond now for 5 years. Just kind of give you a quick background of where I'm coming from. I met my wife in college in Wisconsin. She's from Newcastle, and so we have a connection here with this area. And after college, we went and spent 4 years in Florida and then had our kids and decided we want to get back closer to home. So in 1998, we applied all over the Midwest, Wisconsin, Illinois, and Indiana, and accepted a position here in Richmond in 1998. Moved here. I taught and coached for 5 years. I coached basketball, football, and track. And then 4 years as an assistant principal at Dennis Middle School at the time. And then we moved to Muncie, spent 8 years in Muncie, came back 5 years ago, and it's good to be back in Richmond.
There you go. Now, I checked out your LinkedIn profile, as I want to do, and I noticed that you also have a PhD in education, in administration and supervision. And it kind of seemed like your career, your work activity kind of coincided with your educational activities. You got more education and advanced in your degree field as well.
Absolutely. So when I took my first administrative job at Dennis, I was actually encouraged by an individual who became my boss, Kathy McCarty, at the time as a principal there. We happened to be, I was taking one class and she encouraged me to consider applying, and I did. And then from then went on and got my first master's at Ball State. And then, as chance would have it, I was talking with a friend of mine who was at Union County at the time, and he was getting ready to start his superintendent's license through Indiana State. And he said it'd be really good if we could go together and do this, as a team. And so I decided to jump in and do that, and earned my second master's degree from Indiana State. And then when we moved to Muncie, it just became natural. I was a principal at Northside Middle School, which is right across the street from Ball State.
Right.
And so it just was a natural fit that being right there on campus that I would go ahead and finish my doctorate there. And so it has coincided with that progression. I'm not sure that when I got out of college I thought I would go on and earn a doctorate, but
right. That was going to be my next question, was did you see yourself becoming like a lifetime high school basketball coach, for example, or was your end goal always administration and management of the school system?
So like many, I went into education because I wanted to work with kids, but coaching played the major role in that. So my dad was a college basketball and baseball coach, and all I knew my whole life was going to the gym, being around kids, being around athletes, and really went into education because of the impact that I saw that he had on the lives of kids. And so it was really about coaching, and then teaching was a great part of that as well. My brother was a coach, and then when I met my wife at college, her dad was a coach here in Newcastle. Went on, her older brother Nate coached for a while, her younger brother Tommy still coaches today. So coaching has been a really big part of our lives. My son now coaches at the college level at Olivet Nazarene University. And so that coaching piece of it, and I think ultimately working with kids and working with people really has driven this. I never, ever thought that I would go into administration. But, as you go through it, I think there are different things that happen in your lives that lead you in that direction. And it's really been a great career thus far, and things have really worked out well.
Well, you're the second superintendent that we've had on the show recently that has talked about having a background in coaching, and my question to him, and I'll pose the same question to you, do you think that there's an element of that idea, that approach of coaching as opposed to teaching, that has helped you not only in your interaction with the kids, but as you've advanced through the ranks? Is that coaching focus been something that's helped sustain you and grow you in that?
Yeah, I think it absolutely has. There's so many parts of coaching that are applicable to everything you do in life. And a lot of that is how you deal with people, but it also is how you address deficiencies, and then how do you work through that to get to the point where you're performing better at that. And that's life in general, but there's really so much of education, especially today in a high stakes education world that we live in, with all of the testing that goes with it, is really trying to look at the root cause of issues and try to figure out what that is about, and then how do you address that to make it better for our kids.
There has been a big focus, it seems, even since I was in school, on standardized testing, and we've gone through periods where that's been really the driving factor in education in, pardon me, at least in Indiana, but nationally as well, that students' performance on those standardized tests is the driving factor, and so it's always achieve more, achieve more, achieve more. And sometimes that, it seems to me that background, how do we build on the strengths to overcome the deficiencies, it gets lost in the shuffle of just trying to meet those target numbers. What are you doing as a superintendent to kind of help bring that into play there? I've got some other questions that we talked about earlier, but I think this one ties in to addressing the needs of students for their educational goals.
So one of the things I'll tell you is we never shy away from accountability. I think we need to be accountable for our students' academic success and where they are, and that's from my level down to our teachers, our administrators. Everyone needs to be accountable for that. But I think where we kind of get sidetracked a little bit is when we look at a specific test, a specific date and time of where we stamp either the student showed academic success or they didn't, based off of one snapshot. Schooling here in the state of Indiana is 180 days, and there's a lot that goes into that 180 days. And so we really, here in Richmond, we try to focus on with our teachers is really, that's just one snapshot in time. We want to know what's happening in your classroom with our teachers. We want to know what's happening. We have different assessments that we use to really measure the growth of our kids. But a bigger part of that is really the social emotional learning piece of our kids, and looking at all of the things that are going on with them when they come through the door. You know, many kids come in and they're ready to go right now, and they're ready to learn. And other kids, because of things that they're living, experiences they've had where they're living, things that have happened, really impacts them. And until you address those needs and meet the needs of your kids in that way, you can't get to that other part. Until then, it's just you've got to meet basic needs.
One of the things that we've heard for people that have been paying attention to education in Indiana is that there are some of those basic needs. You know, it may not be what happened that morning that, you know, they didn't get enough sleep last night or what have you, that's making it hard for the student to learn today, but maybe it's an ongoing situation. And one of the things that one of our guests a while back talked about, providing meals after school and weekends for students so that they can come to school and not be hungry. Because if you're hungry, your concern is meeting that need rather than learning some higher math question, you know, and so forth. And those are the questions that meeting those basic needs and taking a holistic approach to the student, not just the test scores, got to be beneficial for your outcomes as you look at what happens with graduation rates and moving on to the next level of the student's life.
Yeah, and that's really very true. And so our kids' breakfast is served at school, lunch is served at school. For students who stick around for practices or have athletic trips after school, we provide meals for them at times, depending on the situation there. But that really has become a huge part of what we do. When I came to Richmond in '98, we were about 56% for reduced lunch. Now we're in the mid-80s, and if you could get everybody to fill out the forms the way they should, it'd probably be closer to 90. And so now, a couple of years ago, we went to where all of our kids qualify for free breakfast and lunch because our rates were high enough for us to be able to do that. And so that has really spilled over then to what we look at even during the summer months. And so last year was the first year we have a food truck now, top of the line. I mean, it's decked out, looks beautiful. And we go around to different locations during the summer and provide meals for students. Anyone up to 18 can come and get meals there. And then we also work with several different sites here within our community to provide meals for them as well. So it really has become more about meeting just basic needs of kids. And I like to say that in education, every social issue sooner or later becomes an educational issue.
Sure.
And that's just one example of how when we look at food deserts and we look at all these different issues that are coming up in our community, what's something that we can do to continue to meet the needs of our kids? And we have a really great group of people here in Richmond Community Schools and in our city and that we work with that has enabled us to be creative and look at those different opportunities that are there to help our kids.
It makes me think of the time in our history when a school building was kind of a central point in the community and a meeting point for the whole community to rally around, oftentimes double purpose as a church building as well. But that whole focus was as a meeting point, a central point where people got together, and then that spilled out back into the community as well.
Yeah.
It's really
And I think if
interesting.
you still, like, if you go to Star, for instance, pick any summer day and go there, that playground is going to be full because kids, that's where they come and that's their safe place and that's where they want to play. And that's repeated as you go around to different schools within our district during the summer. And we love to see that. You know, we try to make our buildings as accessible as we can to our public, to different organizations who need to use them, because we really feel like that's our job. You know, we're Richmond Community Schools, and we want to be great community partners.
That's great. That brings up a couple of questions, but that last comment that I'd like to ask you, and the first one is, you talked about being a good place, a safe place that kids could come, they felt comfortable there and so forth, and yet making it accessible to the public, and that brings in the idea that it's something that's been in the news with education for the last year plus is school safety. And so the question would be, how is Richmond Community Schools addressing school safety to make it a place where safety is not a concern or not a barrier for students and their families in the learning environment?
Yeah, so we have a couple different approaches we take. We try to make sure that our buildings are secure and safe as possible. This past summer, we redid all of our elementary schools and put in a double entrance where you have to get in, you have to be buzzed into the building, and then you have to go through another set of locked doors before you actually have access to the buildings. But one of the things we tried to do with that is make sure that our entrances stayed open, so it wasn't a little narrow hallway where you had to come in, so it was still inviting. And we really tried to explain to our parents, to our stakeholders, what was happening and the reasons behind that. We now use a system called Raptor where you have to put your ID in, and it does a minimal background check on you before you're given access to come and meet with the principal or to meet with a teacher. Just so that way we can make sure that people who shouldn't be around kids aren't around kids. And as we've done that, that really, as a parent myself, that would give me a sense of well-being that they're taking the steps there. And unfortunately, we live in a day and age where we have to be concerned with those kinds of things.
Right.
At the same time, we don't want that to be so locked down that it's, you know, going through 3 or 4 different metal detectors to try and get in. That's not the point.
Right.
So we still want it to be welcoming and open, but at the same time be responsible and looking at that. So we have safety mechanisms in place. I would tell you, though, I really feel like the biggest part of school safety is the human element. And that is our administrators and our teachers having a plan in place that they're familiar with, that they feel empowered to enact when they need to do something. But then also for our students, we try to do things like when you and I were in school, we had fire drills.
That's right.
Well, we still have fire drills, but we also have tornado drills. We also have lockdown drills. And so we go through all these different things, and then our kids get to the point where they understand what they're supposed to do and they react accordingly, and they move and do exactly what they're supposed to do when and if we've had those situations. And
Fortunately,
so,
not so many nuclear attack drills
no,
anymore.
fortunately, fortunately, because those scared me to death. But that really, so you've got to have the protocols in place for security measures, but the biggest piece of it is really having that human element where people feel comfortable with what to do,
Right.
and then how to do it when something happens.
Right. And that school safety and security spills over not only to what's happening inside the buildings, but on the school grounds. You mentioned the students coming to the playgrounds to play in the summer, in the off hours and so forth. But even beyond that, to and from school and school bus safety has been big, especially here in Indiana for the last year as well. And I know a couple of bus drivers who are both pleased with their jobs and like what they're doing, but also are concerned even now still about driver safety on the roads, because that impacts the safety of the children. And these school bus drivers feel a kinship and a responsibility and an affection for these students that are in their charge for a couple of hours a day.
I would tell you, I think top to bottom, school bus drivers have one of the most difficult jobs in our school system. Transporting
I find it hard
kids.
with my 2 kids just being noisy in the back seat.
Yes, yet alone 30 of them
Right.
driving that big. I don't know how many tons those buses weigh, but and picking them up when it's dark out, and I would encourage our people watching, when you see the arm coming out, when you see the lights start to blink, stop. It's just it's not worth it. But our bus drivers, so many times they're the first face that our kids see in the morning. Their parents may be at work when they get up. And so a lot of times they're the first adult that they interact with. And that interaction can set the tone for everything that happens that day. And we're really fortunate here in Richmond Community Schools. We have a great team of bus drivers. And they do, if not, we take for granted the miles that they put on those buses every week, yet alone every school year.
Yeah.
And how many incidents we don't have is really amazing when you look at that.
Right. They have more responsibility really as far as a one-to-one interaction or ratio interaction with students than even the teachers do, and less near help. I mean, it's not like they can just stop and there's another school bus driver sitting in the next lane.
That's right. Send them across the lane to get in the other bus. Yeah. No, you're right. It is a challenge.
Yeah, they can't send them back to the principal's office.
No. They have to drive them back. Yeah.
There's no hall pass for South A.
That's true.
There are some other things. You've been superintendent now for 5 years here at Richmond Community Schools, and looking for a future. And so my question is, are there any successes that you've got recently that you'd like to maybe remind our community members of, or maybe they weren't even aware of to begin with, that have kind of happened, either picking up on the previous administration or that maybe some plans that you have for the future?
Well, we continue to always strive to be better. That's one of the things that we really feel like we have to do. And we've got some things that from the outside looking in you may not notice, and that things such as having a common language for our teachers to talk about with school improvement. One of the things that we talked about before when I got here was we had random acts of school improvement, things happening in this building or that building, but we really didn't have that centralized language to talk about it. And we know that we have a lot of students who move from building to building, especially at the elementary level. And so being able to know where our students were, we have curriculum maps now, we have curriculum calendars that tell us where we're supposed to be and when we're supposed to be there. And it really gives those teachers just that guidance to know, so if I'm getting a second grade student in from another building, I know that they're going to be in a similar spot to where my class is. And so that's been really good. We've really looked at the number of tests our students take and try to minimize that as much as we can, so that we're giving the teachers the ability to do what they need to do in their classrooms and the tools that they need to assess their students rather than just test them. So assessment, the difference there is that they're actually working with the information to impact what happens in that student's educational path that day. One of the things that I think we've done a really good job since I got here, and that has been our technology push.
Okay.
Power Up, where our students 5 to 12 have laptops now that they take home with them, and our K to 4, it's about 2 to 1 right now with technology in their buildings. But we try to really limit, that's not just screen time nonstop. That's not the way we need to go. But they need to be able to access information. As I mentioned before, with our at-risk population being close to 80%, we really work hard to make sure that our students have equitable experiences. And what I mean by that is some homes, they provide computers for their kids, they provide internet, they provide all these different things. But there's a lot of homes where they simply can't. And so our job, I feel very passionately, is to make sure that they're able to go and get whatever job they want to get when they get out of school and not be limited. Well, I didn't have the experience with that. And as you know, as we look at the next 10, 20 years, that some of the statistics you see are as many as 60% of the jobs that our students are going to be employed in haven't even been thought of yet.
Right.
And so literacy, in my opinion, going forward isn't can you read or write. Literacy now is going to be can you learn a set of skills, unlearn that set of skills, and learn the next set of skills. And it's really about how do you receive information, how do you process that information to find out what the product is that you need. As I talk with different people in our industry here, in our economic development groups, about what they need, what are the soft skills you need? Oh, we need people to show up and work. After that, what's the next step? Well, we don't know yet. So what we need is, so once we figure that out, is we need to be able to give them a 4-week course in this, and you learn it and be able to come back and do it. And so it's really about preparing that mindset with our kids to be able to figure out how do I process what they're asking me to do and then take that to the next level.
That brings to mind the idea of learning how to learn and not just learning for the gaining that information just to have it, but being able to, as you said, learn a set of skills or learn something and then be able to unlearn that to learn something else, or be able to move beyond that learning instead of getting locked into that box, as it were, and move on to the next skill set or the next way to do things. There's one truth about change that we know is we're always changing and we always hate it.
Yes,
It's like,
yes, we do.
I love progress and I hate change. You know,
Yes.
so let's do that. And it's not the same. Even when I graduated high school, the idea that we were going to pick a career set and that was we were going to kind of follow that path for a career in one modality is not true anymore. Even by the time I graduated college, it was already becoming a thought that you're going to move. One of the statistics that I heard was that the average person was going to have 7 careers in different fields over their lifetime at that point. And now the pace of change is even more astronomical.
It is.
So that's a big burden on educators to be able to take youth from where they are and set them up for a successful future.
Yeah, and one of the things as educators we tend to tell teachers, you need to teach differently, but we never tell them what that needs to look at. And so we've really worked hard on blended learning, but a part of that is we encourage our teachers to be willing to take risk. And if you fail, that's okay, because that's part of learning. And it's an example for our kids. But with that, especially in our secondary buildings, we have tech teams, which are made up of kids. And so as a teacher, if I'm having an issue with something with technology that I'm trying to implement, I can call one of the students up and they can come in and show me. And it is amazing to see how our students thrive with that opportunity. But to see our teachers that are now to the point where they're like, I'm not the expert in this, but I know that this is the way that I need to reach my kids. And they're okay with saying, so show me how you did that.
Yeah.
You know, or can you do this in a different way? And then being willing to learn from that and to implement that. I think that's huge for our adults to be able to do. And it's just, now it's come to the point where we'll have kids and they're going all over. We actually took a group over to the Superintendent School Board Conference a year ago in Indianapolis, and our tech team presented on the things that they do within our buildings, and it was really to all of the school board members from the state and superintendents. It's just really neat to see how our kids step up and, again, thrive under those opportunities to lead.
As we come to the close of our program, I kind of want to talk about, in Richmond, it's a little bit different than in some of our county schools, in that people that live in Richmond are more set in a school district and so forth. And in some of our county schools, we've talked about the idea of being able to move and some school choice. But that still exists even in Richmond Community Schools. So what are you doing as a body, as a community school system, to attract learners to the community system? And we're running close on time, so that'll be a brief answer.
Short answer. So I think if you really look at the programs that we offer for our students, you literally can go anywhere you want to from Richmond Community Schools. We have students that go to the most prestigious universities in our country. We have students who go straight into the workforce and everything in between. And we really take great pride in that. The diversity is a huge part of that, and being able to experience different things. And I always said, well, I'd love my kids to experience that diversity for the first time when they could come home and eat dinner with me, rather than when they were at college 4 hours away and they had to, would you believe what's going on? And where we could still sit down and talk about why they believe what they believe, why we do what we do. So I think the diversity, the options that we have for our kids are just second to none.
We have a couple of minutes left, a minute or so left, and I would like to ask you, what's the biggest thing you've got on the horizon for Richmond Community Schools for, say, the next 3 to 5 years?
I think the biggest thing is going to continue to be resources and really meeting the needs of our kids. It's an ever-changing dynamic that we're working with, and as we look at funding and how that comes from the state level and the federal level, and really being intentional about how we utilize those resources, where we direct those resources, that is the challenge that we're going to meet. We offer so many great programs, as I just spoke about, but it is making sure that we can continue to do that and know that there are other things that are coming. And so we've got to put ourselves in a position where we're thinking and looking ahead to be able to predict what that's going to be, and then be able to be in a spot where we can do that for our kids.
Dr. Todd Terrill, thank you for being on the show today, Superintendent of Richmond Community Schools. Pardon me. We have kind of glossed over how to get connected. Most people probably know how to find the school building in their local area, but website or other contact information people could
Sure,
do
if you
for more
just Google
information.
We Are Richmond, it'll pull up our website, and you can get there and then onto social media and wherever you need to go from there.
Okay. Thank you for being on the show, and best of luck in your future
Thank you.
as Superintendent of Richmond Community Schools.
Thanks.
And thank you for watching Richmond Community Schools Superintendent Dr. Todd Terrill as he talks about what's going on here in the school system and making Wayne County a great place to work, live, and play. Again, we encourage you to do your part, get connected. Visit We Are Richmond and learn more about what's going on in the Richmond Community Schools. Visit waynet.org/cc to learn more about today's program. On behalf of our producer, Jane Holman, best of luck. And our directors and staff here at Whitewater Community Television, I'm Michael Sweigart, your host. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next month.